Right, this is George with the Talkin podcast, and this week we've got Jack Cooper with us. He's a guitarist based in Shropshire. Um, he studied at ACM and BIM, and his former bands include the Rainbreakers, and he currently plays with an artist called Thomas Atlas, who's a blues and funk and soul artist. Um, he's done teacher training qualifications, and he also works for an independent guitar shop called Music Bros. How you doing, Jack?
Yeah, good. Thank you, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, all good, all good.
Good to see you in
Yeah,
person.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's we just had a little catch up before we started, and we haven't seen each other in person since. Well, if my math's correct, it's got to be 2015
Yeah, yeah,
ish.
and that was in London,
Yeah,
and then before that, yeah, 2010
yeah.
at ACM. Time's just gone, isn't it?
it's just it's just absolutely wild. Like it feels like a lifetime ago, but at the same time, it doesn't. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
the,
Because
the,
I
the,
suppose we still keep in contact, like on Instagram, and I see what you're up to all the time. So it feels like we're still connected, but
yeah,
it's just mad when you think about it that we haven't seen each other for however many years.
yeah,
Still got
right.
still got the same in jokes and.
that's that is that's the power of it all, isn't it? Really, with being a pair of idiots, constantly
Absolutely.
saying the same things whenever we speak to each other, and but
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's one of my favourite bits about Instagram and all the rest of it is that. Well, one of the things I like about it is that I get to keep up with people and
Yeah,
see a bit of what people are up to.
yeah.
Um,
And you haven't changed in like 15 years.
oh, I don't know about that, man. Neither of you, mate. Yeah, we're aging all right. We're not doing
Your,
too
your,
bad.
your skin's impeccable, George.
Oh man, I, I think it's that light from the window.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, okay, maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Should have stayed away from the camera there.
Oh, mate, no, it's good to see you.
Yeah, and you, mate. No, it really is. And I think we should like say like where we met because you know we met at ACM, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the Academy of Contemporary Music for anybody that doesn't know.
Mm.
Um, and I moved up to that's Guildford. It's in Guildford, and I moved there when I was just gone 18, I think, 18 and a half, 19.
Yeah, I think I was 19. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
are you, because I'm 33 now, are you
Yeah, I'm 34. So I think I
34?
would have been, I think you were 18, I was 19. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
right.
yeah. I
Um,
remember I remember moving down and obviously, yeah, you're probably going to get onto this, but we're in the YMCA youth
yeah.
hostel, which which is absolutely mad.
Yeah.
And people are probably wondering why the hell we were there, but that was like the only, if I remember rightly, that was the only student accommodation that like ACM recommended. Because in
Yeah.
Guildford there was like nothing around, and when I went for the open day, they were like, "Oh, so we've got this great accommodation right on the doorstep," And there's me thinking like, as a 19-year-old, really naively thinking like, this is going to be like party central. It's going to, be a proper student accommodation, and then moving in there was just outrageous.
I know.
It was like a holding pen for the Jeremy Kyle show, wasn't it? It was like, and then I remember moving in, being like, "What the hell is this place?"
Yeah.
And then because I was just playing guitar, like I think I'd moved down a couple of weeks before we started,
Yeah.
and I just remember walking out just into the hallway and hearing like someone playing Hendrix or something, and I'll never forget that, man, because I just thought like, what the hell? And I was like massively into Hendrix at the time, like big time. And
Mm.
I think I just heard you playing like, I don't know, whatever it was, Little Wing or something. And I was like,
Yeah,
fuck. And that
yeah,
just blew my mind. And then I had to knock on your door. And I think that's how we met, right? I just kind
right.
of
Yeah, it was. It was. I couldn't. It's interesting you said that because I can't remember that. That's exactly how it went down, but that
yeah.
sounds about right to me.
As far as I can remember, yeah, it was literally like, what the hell am I going to do with my time? And then I just heard someone playing Hendrix. I was like, okay, I got
Yeah,
to meet this guy.
yeah, yeah. Well, we were a bit of a lifeline for each other, really, weren't we? In that
Yeah,
place,
yeah,
because it
yeah.
was like you said, it was a holding pen for Jeremy Kyle esque individuals.
There's there was obviously a few other guys, wasn't there? Like we ended up meeting.
Yeah,
Oh, I can't remember now. I think it was Tom, wasn't it, and Stu and a couple of other
Stu.
guys.
Yeah,
We became like good friends with. But yeah, it kind of got us through, didn't it?
it did.
You know.
Yeah, and do you know what? I actually thought about Stu the other week. I know this is just quickly why you've just mentioned it.
Yeah.
Do you know where he is these days?
No idea. He was a bit of an enigma, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Always in sports gear, like
yeah,
just come to lessons after having like a 3 hour workout or something, and then he'd just disappear.
yeah, 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 yeah.
No, lovely guy, but I've no idea. I'd never kept in touch with him after
No,
ACM.
no, I
No.
know because it's just so long ago, and these faces just kind of go back into the distance in your mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't know where they are. So we went through ACM together, musical education system,
Mm.
and I don't know, man. How did you find that? Like on reflection, years ahead now.
Oh man, it's a difficult one. I mean, I think it was right at the time for me to do. It felt right at the time, but looking back on it, it was kind of, I have to question how much it did for my sort of musical kind of endeavors.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, there's loads of positives. Like we got to do live performance workshops every week. Meeting new people. There were some great teachers there, but I think at that age, when you're like 18, 19, to be in that environment, it's a bit of a musical playground.
mm,
A musician's playground whereby it's you really have to throw yourself in it. And I think I was naive at the time because it was just like, I'm 19, I'm in a new city, 4 hours away from home.
yeah,
Don't know what's going on, and
no,
then before you know it, that time passes you by and you're
yeah,
like, shit, I should have made more of that. And I
yeah,
think with age, you begin to realize, like with anything in music, you've just got to throw yourself at it completely.
yeah,
And at the time, and the same goes for BIM as well. When I left ACM and went to Bristol, it was kind of the same there. I think I was just too young and too naive to really kind of make the most out of it.
mm,
But like I said, there was loads of positives to it, and I'm glad I did it. But I think in hindsight, looking back, it was I don't know. Maybe I would have done things differently.
mm, for
I don't know.
sure.
I don't know if that's the same for you.
Same for me. Oh, I feel exactly the same. But I do look back at it with the idea that, we were young and we moved to a new city. First
Yeah,
time
yeah.
I'd moved away and,
Mm,
and like lived on our own. And it's when you think about that's one element of things. Okay, we were living in the YMCA. When we were living in the YMCA, we only had to pay like one sort of bill, didn't we? Really, that sort
yeah,
of
yeah,
covered the whole thing, which was one of the bonuses
yeah,
of living in that situation.
yeah.
But
That's right.
it was still kind of like learning how to be a bit of an adult as well.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It
and
was
I
a life
say a
lesson,
bit
really.
because
Yeah.
yeah, we'll take that with a pinch of salt, but we're living on our own. We're in a new place, and there's hell of a lot going on.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think to then put on the idea that you know you've got to get through the exams, the curriculum, etc. And then on top of all of that stuff, you've got to sort of, in brackets, make it in some description, whatever that is to you, because we've all got these different ideas of what it was that we wanted to get out of the situation. Was a lot, and I think it was, I got there, and like you, I was very naive. But I remember speaking to, I think it was Stu. Was it Stu? Just one of the guys, and he said, "Yeah, I'm literally just here to get this, and then get a teaching qualification, and then become a teacher."
Yeah, I think it was Stu.
Yeah, it was, and I was just like, at the time, I was like, "Wow, that's like adult,"
Yeah, I just, my head wasn't screwed on like that at that point.
No, yeah,
and some people's are, and I meet a lot of young musicians now, and kind of get really kind of like, shit, man, I wish I was like that at that age, because I was just completely just kind of flying by the seat of my pants a little bit. And like you say, to give ourselves credit, you are juggling a lot of different things at that age. It's a life lesson in itself, living on your own, doing everything for yourself. And then on top of all of that, you're trying to be a musician and kind of, be the best musician you can be, and hone in on your skills and whatever. So it's a lot to contend with. But yeah, I just didn't have that mental kind of get up and go, I guess. At that age, I was just kind of like, I was just obsessed with music, which was the right attitude, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing with it.
Yeah. Well, we don't. I mean, I've heard this phrase before. I think from my dad, actually, when I was pulling him up on his bad parenting skills. He said, I didn't get a manual on being a parent, and it's like some of us didn't get the manual on how to be a professional musician. It just didn't.
Still trying to find it.
Still trying to find it. Yeah, exactly. Like I think it's when I look back at it. Oh, I think that was a lot, but I feel like I came away from the situation better. I mean, I don't know if you can remember, but like I always loved Hendrix and stuff like that and blues, but I think at the time at ACM I was like playing, like I was trying to play like, I don't know, more like shreddy type stuff.
Yeah, I was about to say that, because you were into like Steve Vai at the time, weren't
you? Yeah, and like I've got loads of respect for that guy, but I don't. It's not a style of music now that I would listen to. But I always remember you right from the get go. You were always into good shit.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, even now, we'll probably get onto this, but like musical kind of inspirations and kind of the pathway you go on as a musician, I don't know. But I found Hendrix quite early on, and people like that. So I just, I don't know. I mean, there was friends in my social circle. We were all into that shit when we were younger, so it was no different to me at the time.
Yeah.
But then I know, meeting a lot of people at ACM and all that kind of stuff, they were still kind of, they hadn't yet experienced that, and it was kind of fairly new to them. But I don't know. I mean, it's all good shit, isn't it? And there's no right or wrong pathway. It's just, that's what I was into at the time,
Yeah, no, definitely. No, you are right. But it did, I think there were certain things about like what you were doing that I found quite like admirable at the time. It was like some of the music that you were listening to. One band that I remember was Super 400,
Oh yeah,
Um, do you know what? I didn't think about them for the longest time, like years
yeah,
and years and years, and then they just
yeah,
suddenly come into my head, and I listened to a few of their songs, and I was like, actually, this is really good shit.
yeah.
There's,
Well,
you know,
it was that classic sort of trio revival,
yeah,
and being into like, Band of Gypsies and Cream and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
They were the people um, who I were obsessed with and could get behind, as like modern day players, because
mm,
it's all well and good listening to Hendrix, Clapton, and all that, but when you can relate it to a band that's doing it,
yeah,
and they did it with such conviction, it was just like shit. These guys are playing now, and
yeah,
they're and it was so authentic and stuff. So
mm,
yeah, I was just completely obsessed by them, and that those guys and a band called Rosehill Drive. I don't know if I remember,
right,
if you can remember me mentioning those, but yeah, I was just obsessed
mm,
with that stuff.
mm.
Yeah,
No, it's
yeah,
all really good shit, and as well, like uh, you were always like a really big transcriber.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think, well, when I say that, I don't mean that. What I mean is, I think comparatively to me, I remember like hearing you like really focusing in on stuff and like getting shit down from different players.
yeah,
That I heard you, that
yeah.
you'd like nail a fucking solo or whatever from
Yeah,
someone.
I've always been into that, and
Yeah,
it's probably been my downfall that it's not gone anywhere beyond that. I've always I've always been quite good at imitating players. I'll because like I said, I was always quite obsessive about certain players and certain bands, and I've always wanted
mm,
to be able to do that.
mm,
Whereas, so like I would sit down for hours and transcribe a solo and like pick up every nuance and subtlety about a note, a phrase, or whatever. Um, but sometimes it wouldn't go beyond that, and that's kind of the
mm,
key with hindsight and age that I've began to realize. You need to go further than that and develop it. And but
mm,
at the time, especially, I was just so enthralled by learning other people's stuff. So when it came to learning other people's things and solos and stuff, I would just dive deep into it and learn every kind of nuance I could.
mm,
Um, which
yeah,
like I said, it's a good and a bad thing, because you don't want to just imitate players, but at the same time, it does wonders for you know figuring out and dissecting a certain player and how they function.
yeah. Do you think though that like you say that you're not sure where all that stuff has led? But do you
Mm,
think that like it's in there and it's coming out all the time? Let's just say because I mean this is a much more recent thing, but I saw on your Instagram like you transcribed this Robin Ford solo
mm.
that was really cool. And needless to say, I'm like you, probably a big Robin fan.
Oh, mate, absolutely, yeah, yeah.
And like, do you think though that the process of getting that together, though, that's coming in and then coming out in some way as you?
Yeah, yeah, definitely it is, and I think, yeah, to give myself some credit, it naturally does, and
Yeah.
without thinking about it, because like I said, if you learn a certain phrase or if you dive deep into a certain lick or whatever, if you play that enough, that certain fingering or whatever part of that thing that you've kind of learned does naturally get ingrained in your kind of you know
Yeah.
whether you're improvising or whatever, and I did notice that there was this certain lick that I learned in a Robin solo,
Mm,
and it was just a type of fingering that was a bit alien to me.
mm,
We've all got ways of kind of doing stuff and
sure.
natural things we gravitate towards, and then when I learned this new lick, it became apparent. I think
Mm,
on a gig when I was improvising, I just kind of realized in my head, like, shit, I just did that thing that I learned from that Robin solo without even realizing.
yeah. Right. Yeah.
So
That's the stuff
yeah,
there, then, isn't it? That's it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
even when you're thinking that you're not. It's not coming out the other end. It is. It's
It is naturally, yeah.
yeah, for sure. I actually said this with someone else who I did a podcast with, but the old phrase "you are what you eat," you are what you listen to, you are
Oh, for sure,
what you play or attempt to play or whatever. It's
yeah,
all you're just a
yeah,
conduit for these ideas that are coming in.
yeah. And
Um,
sometimes you don't need to have a guitar in your hands, you know.
mm,
Um, I'm a big listener of music, like more than I am probably a guitar player. So like I'll just listen and listen and listen to stuff, and then realize that I'm playing something that I've or like imitating something that I've listened to. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't need to always be a transcription or something. If you
mm,
listen to enough and you're obsessed by it, then that naturally comes through in what you're doing.
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. No,
Yeah.
you're 100% right there. I've been recording recently some of my own stuff, and it's a totally different process. It's like it's a thing that requires a totally different kind of frame of thought.
Mm,
Right down
mm,
from the way that I have a live guitar sound is
yeah.
different to how I would approach it when I'm recording.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
the certain sounds I'm using and stuff, and the other day I was recording, I was like, I don't know, I forgot how to pronounce their name. Is it like Krungbin or Krang?
Krungbin. Yeah.
Krungbin, is that it?
Krungbin. Yeah.
Yeah, I really dig those guys.
Oh,
Like,
amazing, man. I saw those live. I saw those guys live in Amsterdam, and
oh,
it
did
was,
you?
yeah. Me and a few mates went. Um, yeah, a venue called the Paradiso, and they were just incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. A really
just
underrated guitar player as well.
oh,
Yeah,
sure. He's just vibe central, isn't he? He's not worried about
yeah, he
anything.
is. Yeah,
He's just vibing it, the whole
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was just using that as an example because I've never sat there and learnt one of their songs or figured out anything. I've just like listened to a bit of it in the car and
Yeah.
at home and whatever. And I was recording something the other day, and I was sort of trying to get sounds that I was sort of a little bit reminiscent of what I was hearing. I think it's Mark Spear, isn't it, the
Mark
guitarist?
Spear. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Um, just a few little vibey things that he was kind of working with,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I got into a rough sort of ballpark of that kind of thing. So it is
Mm.
just a thing that you listen to, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good to
Um,
have a reference point, isn't it? Especially when you're doing your own stuff, because that's like,
yeah,
I mean, everyone's different, and some people are really great at having that idea and the sound of what they want to achieve straight away. But
mm,
it's so good to have reference points where you can just extract certain sounds, and you've always got to have an idea of what you want to achieve sound wise, haven't you?
yeah,
Otherwise
for
you're
sure.
just kind of going in blind. But yeah,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, Another thing that just quickly came to mind about the ACM thing, and I'll probably move on to a bit of something else with you in a minute, but
yeah.
I'll always reference you with my guitar students
Oh, really?
when, yes, when we talk about holding a pick, because
Oh, yeah.
some of my guitar students that come to me will hold a pick like this or
Hmm.
like this,
Yeah.
um, instead of like that. I
Mm.
mean, I actually just used the big old fat round edge the entire time these
Yeah,
days and
yeah,
have done for a long time. But anyway,
yeah,
um, but I remember like back at ACM, didn't you used to hold it like this or like this?
yeah. I was just trying to find a plectrum just to show you, but yeah, I used to hold it like that with two fingers, like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember, and I remember
yeah,
you got together a pretty good like you had shit down with that technique. You were sounding good, but I think what it was didn't you do like some sort of like exam type of thing, and you were
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
pick through like an eighth note thing or something, and
yeah,
then you
yeah,
were running into problems with it, and the lecturer said, try and change it up, and you worked your ass off on it and got it good.
yeah, yeah. So I can't remember what exam it was at ACM, but I think it was like an arpeggio exercise or something.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you know, I had to do it. It was, I felt quite under pressure anyway, so my hands were probably like Cumberland sausages and shaking all over the place.
yeah, yeah,
So, so, but
yeah.
it, yeah, it, it was,
just Cumberlands, you know what I mean?
but it was to a metronome,
Mm.
and yeah, it was just really difficult. And I can't remember the teacher who said it, but he was basically just looked at me and said that was shit, And I remember just leaving thinking like, I just want to throw away the guitar. Do you know what I mean? Because everything
Yeah,
that I'd known up till that point, he didn't necessarily say change your technique, but I think he sort of hinted that it was quite unorthodox the way I was doing it.
right.
So so I just came away thinking like, oh God, like I feel like I'm back to square one. And then all of a sudden, I mean, it wasn't like a massive departure in what I was already doing, but it was just a slight shift in the kind
Mm,
of position.
mm,
And yeah, just like really boringly went through loads of exercises and, chromatic like little exercises just to like get that technique down. And then, yeah, I just haven't looked back since. And in fact, I actually play the same way as you now, just use like the fat end of the plectrum.
yeah,
And because I think I heard you saying that's what you did, and then I heard Robin say that he did the same, and then all of a sudden that's just become like my go-to now. And like using the actual point of a plectrum just feels completely weird to me now.
yeah, for
So
sure. Oh, mate. Well, yeah, it's like when I look through the people that do it that way, I
yeah,
go, why isn't this a thing that isn't talked about like on a mass
yeah,
scale?
yeah,
Because Stevie Ray Vaughan, Matt Schofield, Kirk Fletcher, Robin Ford, Tom
mm,
Bucherback, um, there are others, but even if it was just those five names alone,
yeah. That's all you need, isn't it?
I would be like, wow, so all of those guys do it that way. And
Yeah, yeah,
then it's almost like I don't cringe, but I do sort of like think because I don't. I had a stage with Stevie Ray Vaughan, as many players have done in the past,
mm,
and I still do. I mean, I still haven't had a Stevie stage for a little while, but
mm,
one of the things that sort of gets me, like when I see players playing with a Strat, a Tube Screamer, massive strings, they're playing
mm,
all tuned to E flat,
mm-hmm.
they're playing the classic licks, and then they're playing with the pointy end of the plectrum. I'm like, dude, you're ruining it. You know, you do.
Yeah.
You don't like turn the plectrum round.
It's where the
That's
tone is.
that's where the tone is, mate. Like, don't get it mixed up. That's a huge part of it. Like, there are other things that I can see that he was doing. Like
Mm,
the way that he almost, because I've seen him. I've had a close up look of his right hand, and he's got like
mm.
the big old fat round end of his plectrum, and like the way that he almost does like this rest stroke. It's almost like this gypsy jazz style rest stroke thing.
Yeah.
And he's not doing it all the time. Don't get me wrong. It's when he's
Mm,
doing like those open, um, you know, E minor pentatonic position,
yeah.
classic, and he's
Yeah.
ripping through that, and you think to yourself, how has he got that sounding so good and so in time, and just
Yeah.
like fucking sounds good straight away. Like everything about it is like,
Yeah.
and
It's unmatched, really. Like his right hand
yeah,
is just unreal. Like the
oh
attack and the precision is just ridiculous. Like even on a 12 string, when you see that footage
yeah,
of him doing Rude Mood on the
yeah,
unplugged thing, it's just like, what the hell's going on?
I know. I know
But
it's easy to forget, isn't it? Until you like see a video like that, and you
yeah,
go,
yeah,
you revisit it, and you go, "Oh God!" Like that
yeah,
was
yeah,
the right hand is just like
yeah.
on
It's
it.
unbelievable. Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, I've never obsessed over him like other players have, but I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, he's just unbelievable.
yeah,
The attack, but yeah,
for
it's just
sure.
insane. Yeah,
It's a bit. I was just sort of like say this as a final caveat on Stevie. To me, one of the reasons is almost, like I was actually watching a thing with JD Simo,
oh, okay,
um,
yeah,
and he was talking about his because he played all the guitars for the Elvis movie,
that's right. Yeah,
and watched a really interesting interview with him. Anyway, he was sort of saying like a lot of Elvis's legacy is tied up to the past few years of his life, and
mm,
all of these like Elvis impersonators these days have
yeah,
kind of tarnished the legacy a bit. We
mm,
sort of view Elvis as like being fat in a
yeah,
jumpsuit,
yeah,
with
yeah,
dodgy
yeah.
impersonators.
Yeah,
And
you never get a young Elvis impersonator, do you? It's always the kind of cheesy, kind of, you know,
yeah,
cliche version of Elvis. Yeah,
for sure. And I just think like Stevie has suffered a little bit from that.
yeah, yeah,
There are guys out there like famous ones like Philip Sace and Kenny Wayne Shepherd and people like that are very Stevie influenced that have had great careers and have their own voice on the guitar but are influenced by him. But then
mm,
there are like this massive people, trying to do that thing, and I think that's
mm.
part of the put off. I think for some of us.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
it is for me, for sure. I mean, because going full circle, what I was saying earlier, like that will used to be my thing to just like try and imitate players and like really try
yeah,
and sound like players. And I remember learning loads of Stevie stuff when I was younger and,
mm,
trying to get it down. But I don't know, for me, he kind of falls into a certain category like Hendrix, really. Like, even though Hendrix has always been, cream of the crop for me, it was like,
sure.
I kind of don't want to touch that stuff.
Yeah,
Does that
yeah.
make sense? I don't
Oh,
want to go there
perfect sense. Yeah,
because I don't that's been done. Like he's got such a unique voice, such incredible talent. Like there's no point me trying to. I mean, yeah, learn it for the sake of learning it and kind of diving in to see what they're doing and how you
yeah,
play it.
right.
But
Yeah,
in terms of kind of being that kind of player and wanting to imitate it to a certain extent, I don't know. It sort of cringes me out a little bit. And when I hear
yeah,
kind of people doing Stevie to a point that's just they're trying to sound exactly like him.
yeah,
It just doesn't quite relate to me. I think, well, that's been done. And that's not to sound harsh, like, you're never going to be Stevie, but there's, there's just kind of no, yeah, like I said, it just doesn't relate to me. It's
mm,
kind of been there and done. And I just kind of want to leave it there.
yeah,
So
for sure,
same with Hendrix. Yeah.
for sure. I've got such a sort of like sacred relationship with Hendrix's music that I do Hendrix covers live with my band, but
Hmm.
we do like two at the moment, and one of them we do a version of Foxy Lady that I totally changed.
Oh, I've
Um,
heard that. Yeah, yeah. But this is what I'm talking about. You've interpreted that in your own way. So when I hear that, that's like I'm hearing George Hall covering Jimmy. Do you know what I mean? I'm not hearing someone just trying to be Jimmy.
sure,
You know?
well, because that's the thing. Because like many of us, I've played Hendrix's music over the years, and I feel like if I've occasionally like played Little Wing, and I've got my own sort of little take on it, but it's an
Mm,
amalgamation, I suppose, of different stuff.
yeah.
And I think if I'm not in the right mindset, or I thought it doesn't feel right. I'm like, I can't be doing this. Like,
Yeah,
what the hell? Like, you can't just be playing Little Wing. It's not something that you just do. Like
yeah.
it's like those jams that you see with some famous guitar players that all get up on stage and like murder Little Wing together. I'm like, why, guys?
I
Like,
know it's cringe, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
yeah, it's just one of those ones that unfortunately, like you say, with like Stevie and Elvis or whatever, like there's certain parts that have been tarnished because you just hear it so much, and
yeah,
that's not to detract how great the track is or whatever. It's just like it's just been done so many times, you know.
yeah. Right. No, for
So
sure.
yeah,
So, like with you then, like, because you've been working with Thomas. Is it Thomas Atlas?
yeah.
And I saw because he used to have a different name.
Yeah, well, his name's Tom Walker.
That's
Um,
it. That's it. And he
yeah,
changed his second name.
yeah. So when I first met him, he was going under just the Tom Walker trio,
Yeah.
um, and then and then he and then, no, then it was Tom C Walker because basically what happened was I think someone from Tom Walker, the other artist, the guy who did the Leave Your Light On tune, whatever that
Oh
was.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so there his management got in touch with Tom and basically said you need to stop going out under your own name. so so
Wow.
Tom
Yeah.
was like so Tom was like, okay. So he ended up just putting a C in between it, but then I think just over time he's just thought, right, I need to kind of rebrand a little bit. So I'm not sure
yeah.
where the Atlas came. I'm not sure where the Atlas came from, but yeah, he's just going under Thomas Atlas. But um, so
Right.
yeah, I mean, when I met him, he was doing very much like a bluesy sort of trio sort of thing. But then
Yeah.
he's kind of rebranded and um, reinvented himself over the years, and it's very much like a funky soul
Mm,
blues outfit now. Yeah,
mm. Yeah. It's great. I've heard bits and pieces, and he's first and foremost, he's got a great voice, hasn't he?
yeah, very natural voice. Yeah, I remember meeting him and thinking, "Fuck, man!" Like his voice was just incredible, and he's so natural on guitar as well.
Mm,
Um,
yeah. He's not
there's a few.
forced.
No, not at all. Completely just flows through him. And I've only met certain players over my time who can do that, and you being one of
Mm.
them.
Oh, thank you,
Um,
Jack.
yeah, no, it's true because you can tell, and I'm way too much for an overthinker when it comes to guitar, and there's that um, bit in between that I think some players are able to just completely eradicate, that kind of over thought process
Mm,
um, and yeah, it just completely flows through him. And yeah, I was always like in such like I was just always in admiration of his playing and stuff. So when I got to join his band, I was like absolutely chuffed to bits because they were like
mm,
my musical heroes at the time, really. Him and
mm.
the bass player, especially. Yeah.
Nice, man. So what you're doing? Like bluesy, funky, soul-y tunes. And is it like originals plus covers, or is it mainly covers?
Yeah, mainly originals. Yeah, so Tom did his first full length album probably a couple of years ago.
Mm,
So we were kind of touring off the back of that. But he's always writing, so it's always mainly been originals with like a load of covers thrown in for good measure
mm,
as well.
mm.
Um,
Nice.
but yeah, he's always chopping and changing. So it's probably worth noting that I haven't gigged with him now for probably about 6 months or so because he's always been. I mean, when I first joined, we were just like guitar, bass, drums, vocals, and then we were started adding in like a keys player, and then he got in a brass section. And then some gigs when he's going a bit further afield, he hasn't really needed an extra guitar player because the
Yeah,
band's kind of been naturally filling out. Sometimes I haven't got involved, so it's
yeah,
just one of those. Um, and that's cool, you know. But so I haven't got a lot on with Tom at the minute, but hopefully something in the future anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure it will come back around. What about like other stuff? Are you getting together with any other players at the moment, or any other bands or anything? Or?
Yeah, I'm trying to look for a new project really. I mean, I'm sure you can relate to it. Life just takes over, doesn't it? Like I've recently moved in, bought a house with my partner, and then I'm working sort of full time at the shop as well. So it's like before you know it, life just like kind of goes by. But really, really keen to like get another project on the go. I'd love to just kind of do some sort of just like duo gigs, just trying to seek out a really good vocalist where I can do some duo stuff. And then I'd like to get myself in another band at some point as well. But I was doing teaching for a bit, and that's kind of taken a bit of a backseat. So I'm at the moment, man, I'm just kind of just shedding, just like going back to basics and just really trying to hone in on stuff that I want to do and stuff I want to learn. And
well, the right thing will come along. If there's anything that like the past few years has taught me, and as well, like there are times where like you go without work or you go without music, and I've going back years now, I would think, oh, is it going to come back around? Am I going to get going again? Kind of thing. And it always does. Like an opportunity will present itself, or I will put myself out there and just send a few messages or something, or
definitely,
so something will happen, and I, you get going again. It doesn't. I think it's only over when you sort of say it's over.
Definitely,
if you're like, oh, I'm not doing this anymore, kind of thing. But I actually find the time periods, because I've got quite a busy September, and then it really dies off gigs wise. And I mean, there's a part of me that goes, oh Christ, not a lot of gigs going on over the winter. But the other part of me is like, well, great, I get to work on some other stuff then, And I teach and stuff, so like, just focus on the teaching, focus on getting some of my original music together, focus on recording, or trying to drum up a different project. Well, one of the things that I really want to do is get like a really. I was saying this the other night to a band I was rehearsing with. I really want to get like a fucking great funk soul function outfit. That's the dream. Playing a load of just Motown tunes.
Oh man, that's my dream as well. That's the shit I'm into these days. Is like 80% Motown. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I love it. That for me. I mean, maybe it will come about. I'll have to put some work in for sure. I love all that stuff.
Man. But I suppose that's the way you got to be, and I assume you're doing it sort of full time. The music thing, and because I mean, even though I'm working in a guitar shop, it's still very much a retail job at the end of the day. So that kind of takes up most of my time. So I mean, what's that phrase? Plan B only detracts from plan A, sort of thing. So so when you're doing something and you're having to make it work, like you say, if you've not got any gigs, you're kind of fighting for sort of other teaching things, other projects, whatever. You're sort of making it work. Whereas for me, I guess I've become, admittedly quite lazy with it, because I've got that stability with a full-time job. So if
Right,
I'm not if I'm not gigging or got any projects, I'm kind of still comfortable. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Whereas
Oh,
whereas
100%. Yeah.
whereas in music, you know, you've got to have that sort of fight to make it work a lot of the time. You've got to push yourself, and if you kind of relax, you know, like I've experienced, time can pass you by, and all of a sudden you're 34 and you still don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, you are right, mate. I think it's where when you are self-employed and you do get the fire up your ass. You know,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
like, right,
yeah,
I've got to be getting on. Yeah,
yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But tell what's like your music shop like? Is it are you a guitar retailer or a bit of
Yeah,
everything?
yeah. So it's been going like 17 years now. And it used to be sort of a general music shop, but then over the years, it's just become far more guitar specialist,
Mm.
which works for me. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but we've really honed in on some great dealerships and brands over the years.
Mm.
So like we're doing, I mean, when I started like 7 years ago, we were doing the odd Fender American piece and, you know, the odd high end sort of guitar. But now it's like Gretsch American custom, um, Gibson custom shop,
Wow.
uh, Fender custom shop. So it's become much more of a high end sort of boutique thing.
Yeah.
Um, but it's awesome, mate. I get to work with, you know, my best friends, and we become like a little family sort of thing over the years. There's
Mm.
only four of us that work there, and to be sort of a little fish in a big pond, trying to compete with all these kind of big retailers like Guitar, PMT, all that kind of stuff. It's hard work, but it's awesome to
Mm.
be in that world.
For sure.
You know, and we're getting, you know, not to slag off any of those big names, but you get a lot of people coming down to us and saying how like what a great vibe it is, and
Yeah,
how much
right.
it's better to buy from an independent, you know, than to maybe go into somewhere a bit more corporate and kind of not really have that personal sort of experience. But
For sure. Well,
yeah.
that sounds like a really cool job to have. And
Oh mate, it's awesome, yeah, and to get to meet people, you know, within the industry, because we get a lot of reps coming over. So like,
mm,
you know, um, the main sales rep for like Fender Europe and stuff. You know, you're kind of meeting these people, and you know, it's giving you a bit of an idea of how this game works. But
mm,
at the same time, it's like very much like I said, still a retail job. So it kind of, although you although it's like a dream job to have, it's still not. You know, you still don't get a guitar in your hands and get to
mm,
work on your own stuff. You know, it's very different from being a
sure.
musician. You know.
I get you. I get you. But what you said though about that about going to the big retailers like um, the closest one to me is Absolute Music in Bournemouth,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
quite a big store. But
Mm.
they when you go in there, you look into the eyes of the employees and they're truly dead. Like they
Yeah.
honestly, they're they're just a lot of these bigger retailers
Mm.
with these guitar shops. They just you go in and you kind of like I try and be really friendly with the staff,
Mm.
you
Mm.
know, because I worked for a short while in a guitar shop in London,
Mm.
and I know how it feels, you know, when someone comes in and says, "Can I try out that four
Mm.
thousand pounds Gibson?" And you look at them and they've got like a Nirvana hoodie covered in beans on, and you're just like, mate, like got a Nirvana
Yeah.
hoodie on, covered in beans, you know.
Oh mate, we get the most, like, I've worked in a few retail shops over the years, but a guitar shop attracts the fruitiest of people. It's just crazy. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
it's mad. It's mad. And you've really got to, you know, you kind of, you can't discriminate, can you? But
no,
yeah, it is
that's
it is a
it.
weird scenario when people just want to come in and be like can I give that a go? And they're like wanting to grab a Gretsch custom shop out the cabinet. It's like, maybe not.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
yeah.
It is. It's a funny position to find yourself in, and not get, I suppose, a bit jaded with it. You know, when you're just like, oh God, like. But anyway, the times that I've been to the smaller independents, and there's a few that come to mind. For some of them that do well and have a good reputation, it's for a good reason, because the staff in there are great. And they're helpful, and you know, they welcome you when you come in, ask if you need anything, you know, all those kind of things. And
well, it's just the little things, isn't it, you know, that doesn't take a lot. You know, if you go into a shop and you're made to feel a bit inferior, or you know, no one really kind of says anything or wants to help, then you're kind of less inclined to go back, aren't you? But
100%.
You know, having said that about, you know, giving someone a $9,000 guitar or whatever, you want to encourage people to pick these things up and be like, you know, have a play of it, because it's a kind of a dying art, really. You know, so many people buy guitars online, which is just madness. And you know, I'm not talking about like a mass produced, you know, Fender player Strat or whatever, but some people click and buy custom shop stuff, and it's so personal to each individual. You know, to spend $4,000 on a guitar without trying it is just mental.
It is.
So you want to get these things in people's hands and be like, this is why it's special, you know. Encourage people to play them.
100%. So what have you got? Because I remember you have got a Gibson ES335.
So when we met, I think I was playing a Telly.
That's right.
Just an American Telly. And then after that, when I kind of came out of BIM and stuff, I got a Gibson ES335. It was one of the Memphis models, but it was kind of a weird time, because I think they were putting out certain stuff that was kind of deemed as custom shop, but it kind of wasn't. But it was a limited run, basically, of a Sunburst 63 335 with block inlays. And but I've recently sold that and got another 335.
Oh man.
Which I'll show you. I've got it.
Yeah,
here.
Man.
So this is, I was fortunate enough to get this through the shop. I don't know if the lighting's really crap, but
I can see it. Is it like a cherry red sort of?
Yeah. So this is a 1961 Murphy Lab.
Oh wow.
So it's got that ultra light age thing going on. So it's like you see a few checks in the lacquer. It's probably really hard to see on here, but yeah, based on a 1961. So the one that I had was based on a 63 before, where the horns were a bit pointier. You know, like Clapton's famous 64 335, where it's got like slightly pointier horns. So these were a bit more rounded, and it's got the dot inlays. And but yeah, man, it's such a great guitar. And this came into the shop, and I was like, I've got to have it. So I sold my old one and got this. And it's become sort of my main thing. Like before this, I was playing a Strat. I was fortunate enough to get a custom shop Strat through the shop as well. So that's the perk of working in a guitar shop, isn't it? I've been able to get some nice stuff over the years that would have normally been quite a lot of money at quite a good price. But I got a custom shop Strat a few years ago, and that sort of became my main thing. And it's
that the black one?
Yeah, black Strat. Yeah,
so you still got that?
Still got it. Yeah, still got it. And I've also got a custom shop Telly as well, which makes me sound like a real twat. But
custom shop ES335, custom shop Strat, custom shop Telly.
It's quite cringy saying it, but I've just been really fortunate in being able to get this stuff. But I've never kind of had one guitar which I felt like was my main thing. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I feel like some players have just like picked up their first guitar and that's been their main guitar, or like they, whatever sort of variation of that guitar. It's always been their main thing, whether they've been a Strat player, Tele player, whatever. But yeah, I've never kind of felt like this is me sort of thing. But and I mean, I'm getting close to it. That 335 that I've got is for what I do now, especially with like kind of more sort of rhythmic sort of stuff, Motowny, funky stuff. I mean, that gets close.
For sure.
I'm
That's a
still,
really nice guitar, man. It looks
oh,
amazing.
it's lovely, yeah, and the humbuckers are just amazing because, in my personal experience, with my older 335, the humbuckers were quite muddy,
Right.
which some people like regard that as what a humbucker should sound like in terms of like being just warm and stuff. But in my opinion, when you've got a humbucker that sounds like quite bright and quite almost
Yeah.
tele-like,
Yeah.
like that's where it's at for me.
For sure. I've got a mate that just got a Gibson 335, and he's got a couple of P90s in there. And
Oh right.
I think they offer like quite a nice like in between.
Yeah.
They're a little bit. I know they're their own thing, but yeah, like you, I suppose the some of the humbuckers and Gibsons are just going in the wrong direction for me. They're too dark and sort of compressed, and which works for some people, but for me, coming more from a sort of Fender side of things,
Yeah.
it's like a contrast a little bit
It's
too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like the new Gibson that you've got, it's got just that nice sort of, slightly brighter.
Yeah, there's
thing
real
going on.
clarity to it. You can get that kind of warm kind of jazz thing going on, but then especially for rhythmic sort of stuff, they just come
Yeah,
into their own, I think. Like the
yeah,
middle position's just outrageous.
yeah,
So yeah, for that sort of style, because I'm massively into like the meters and and that kind of stuff. So I mean, it just works perfectly for that. Any kind of funky sort of James Brown sort of stuff, it's just perfect,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's that Leo.
No
I was going to
Centelli.
say no, Centelli. I always get his last name wrong.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
isn't his thing sort of like the middle position on a sort of on a 335 kind of thing? Is it like a
That's it.
Gibson middle position type of thing?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Kind of that. Yeah, I love that. So I love the meters.
Oh mate, amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely love the meters. They're just the grooviest, just thickest syrup to swim through.
They are, mate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Outrageous. Yeah.
absolutely. What
I mean,
about? Sorry, mate. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, their whole back catalogue is just so inspiring because you've got the early instrumentals, and then you've got like the sort of mid-70s stuff where they started bringing in the vocals, like what's the album, Rejuvenation.
Yeah,
It's just incredible. So such great stuff to learn as well for a rhythm player, and just to really kind of learn how to play in the pocket. It's such good stuff to learn. Yeah.
there's so many nuances with it all as well. Like,
Oh yeah.
when you start getting deep into it, like any of us would casually have learned Sissy Strut over the years,
Oh
or something like that. But to then get deep into it and getting into the parts, there's so many interesting nuances that get lost.
You see so many people play that wrong, and it's just it's funny. And that's what I mean about like kind of, I mean, that style of music in general, same with like blues and stuff. So many people tend to just like learn the parts or learn the notes and then just leave it there. Whereas that sort of stuff you've got to really study, because it could be it could be the what we were saying about earlier, like the position of the pick, or a type of voicing. There's
Sure.
so much stuff to dissect that so many players get that stuff wrong. And it's like one little phrase could be a study in itself. There's so much to unpack. Yeah.
Absolutely. What about like your amps and pedals? I seem to remember at uni. Did you have a deluxe reverb back then? Or was
I don't
that
think I had one back then. I think I had a Blues Junior back then.
that was it?
Yeah, that was sort of the main amp I had back then, because it was just so. I mean, I wasn't really gigging at that point, really, being
No.
sort of, and especially moving to uni, it was kind of like the best portable amp to have that was Valve. But then I started gigging after uni in a band, and I needed something more powerful, so that's when I got the deluxe. So I played that for years, but never. I mean, it depends on the context, because at the time I was playing in a bit more of a rock outfit.
Right.
So I was putting pedals through it, and it was at times a bit too much with a lot of pedals. But then, having played with Tom over the last few years, it's kind of worked perfectly for that kind of funky stuff, because it just sits in the mix perfectly.
Yeah.
I did manage to get a super reverb off a mate of mine as well, who was selling it really cheap. So I've got a super reverb, which hardly ever comes out, but it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years back, I picked up a Lazy J.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Lazy J20.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're familiar with those, like based
Yeah.
on like a old Fender Tweed Deluxe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
I know the ones.
Yeah, which is unreal. But the kind of really disappointing thing I found, I got it, and I had a rehearsal with Tom the next day, and I went there, and I was having to like turn the bright switch up like almost the whole way, because it was like, compared to the Fender that just seemed to like cut through and just kind of sit in the mix perfectly, like the Tweed sound was just a bit too dark.
Right. Wow.
So for that rhythm stuff, like I spent this money on a Lazy J and got there and was like, fuck.
Shit.
But
Shit. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, it's its own thing, really. Like, for
Yeah.
any kind of bluesy stuff, or if I was in like maybe more of a kind of raw kind of bluesy outfit, it would work perfectly. But for any kind
Right.
of real kind of rhythmic sort of stuff, I think the Fender always comes out on top. Yeah.
Right. I'm in agreement there completely. I think because I've got a 68 custom deluxe,
Oh
which
yeah, nice amps.
yeah, it's nice. It's got a lot of good things about it, and I just find it to be in the Goldilocks zone. Of
Yeah.
like it's. I mean, it's not too big. It's not too small for a lot of situations. It takes pedals really well. It it's got a great clean sound.
Yeah.
It can work really well with overdrive as well. The one that I've got does.
Yeah.
There's a channel. I think the first channel was called Custom, and it's
Is that modeled on a basement or something?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I have absolutely no idea what or how close or whatever. I frankly couldn't care. It adds, I suppose, to the sound. It's a little bit more mid-range. It's a little bit
Yeah.
beefier,
Yeah.
and that really works well for me. And then the other channel is a little bit more reminiscent of your sort of standard sort of deluxe sound. But yeah, I love that. And I've got a little Blues Junior sat right next to me, which I just use at home because
Yeah.
it's does what it does.
Well, yeah, and it's got the preamp volume, hasn't it? So you can crank it and turn
Yeah,
the master down, so you can get that sort of overdriven sound without having to put any pedals through it and stuff, can't you?
absolutely. Yeah, that's good
Yeah.
for that. But one thing I found recently, it's funny you mentioned the Super Reverb because I did a gig. I've done quite a few gigs outside this summer, and like I've got a slightly bigger amp than the Deluxe, but it's not working at the moment. But one of my thoughts were like, the minute you go outside is the minute that your 20-watt amp starts behaving like
Yeah.
a bit of a wimp. And then
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
where I'm thinking, man, if I had a Super right now.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's because sometimes a Super isn't actually, you think of it and it feels a bit overkill to own. Do you know what I mean? It's a big amp, 4 speakers. It's like you kind of overthink and start to wonder why, what scenario I'm going to need to use this. But in reality, it's actually not that much louder. It's like
No.
you can really control it, and it's just with the 3 extra speakers, you just get such a clarity, and they just sound incredible. And like you say, especially playing outside or something like that, just pushing that much more air, it's just like they just seem to work and just carry themselves a little bit better than a small 1x12.
For sure. Yeah, that's right. I think the thing is that they're just different tools, just do slightly different things, but they all have their uses. What about like pedals? Are you much on pedals, or have you got any bits that you like?
Yeah, I mean, it's been refined over the years. I mean, whenever I'm practicing at home, I'll just go straight into an amp. And I think just having studied a lot of players over the years, I've become to realize like it's, the main effect you need is the volume control.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So just, getting more familiar with your own instrument and kind of using the volume and tone to your advantage is like you've got all kind of, especially for me, everything I need there. But when I'm playing with Tom, it's mainly just for adding bits for color, So I picked up a wah. I've had loads of wahs over the years, but I picked up a really good wah from a guy called Venus Switch.
Oh yeah,
which are like sort of built to order, sort of boutique wahs based on the good old boxes. But that's incredible. That's incredible.
Okay.
I've got a Vemuram Janray.
Yeah.
Just for a bit of overdrive. But to be honest, it's a great pedal, but for what I do, it's just still a bit too much. I'd still probably rather just use the volume control on my guitar. What else did I have? I had a phaser for a while, just for any kind of like funky sort of bubble parts,
Yeah.
And then I've also got like what's it called? A mini vent, so like a Leslie rotating speaker. So I got one of them, and like I said, it was just to use like certain bits, just to use as color, really, like just like certain sections of a song where you just want that kind of rotating speaker sound, or just like the end of a phrase where I can use a wah. So it was never like in a sort of gimmicky way to like use them all the time. It was just like sort of flashes of color here and there. But that's about it, man. But yeah, like I say, I'm just such a lazy guitar player, especially when I'm home. I'll just kind of be playing just straight through the amp.
I think that's the best way forwards. I think like even though I do use some pedals, I think my main purpose when I'm using them live is I'm approaching it, and I didn't realize I was doing it like this, but or at least I didn't at first, but I was approaching it like I'm playing through a dirty amp. So like I'll show you what I mean, because so this is a pedal board that I use. This is what's got it on it, and I just use this overdrive side of this, and then that's sort of set to like a sort of light medium gain, and then I just use my volume knob, for
Yeah.
different degrees of dirt.
Yeah.
And I when I'm playing rhythm guitar, when I'm singing, I'm living on about 7 or 8 on the volume knob,
Yeah.
and then I'll if I'm playing a slightly, more of a slight lead part or whatever, then the guitar volume pops on 10. And then if I want it a little bit more compression for a little bit more of a sort of slightly singing lead sound, I'll just click this on
Yeah.
in front of that, but there's not a lot of gain on it. I'll just leave it on about 9 o'clock on the gain and just boost the output a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit of treble just to sort of, add a little bit of that, and then that helps cut a bit more. But then that's it. I think I rarely use. Well, I use the delay a little bit. I had a period where I'd always use it for slapback, but now I don't even really use it.
Is that the Echoplex? Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I quite like this delay. I've got on with really well with it. It sort of sits in it. Delays can piss me off, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
They can be a bit like just sometimes I feel like they get in the way, or they're just not really doing what I want them to. But this doesn't. It just sounds pretty good. And then I just use the flint for a bit of reverb and then a bit of trem, and then that's it really. I'll use a fuzz, and I've not really. I've got out of using wah so much, but it's there if I need it. I think I need to get a good wah again, because actually a pedal that I remember you used to have, which I've got now, is the old purple label Buddha wah.
Oh yeah, man, I forgot about that. Yeah, God, I sold that years ago. So you've still got that?
Yeah, that's the one I use now, and I got it.
Yeah,
I got it because I thought, I remember you having one.
Yeah,
and I saw it come up for sale, and I got it for like 70 quid on eBay.
really.
Yeah, it was a steal, and I thought it's tree bypass. It's got good, reviews or whatever. So I got it, and it is a good wah. Actually, I don't know if I do need another wah, but that Venus Witch wah sounds like it's pretty damn cool.
Yeah. Oh, it's the closest. I think I was listening to Doyle Bramall, and he's got an old 1968 wah, like an original Vox wah, and and it's making me sound like a wah obsessive, because, like I said, it's just for certain for what it does. There's certain applications where it's just it's one of the greatest effects, but too much and it just becomes way too gimmicky, doesn't it? But
100%.
But yeah, there's this real kind of like, and this is a cliche term, but with certain wahs, they're like really liquidy. Like you hear some old like Cream stuff with Clapton, and it was just like sounded unbelievable. And this guy, I can't remember how I found out about him. There's certain players now that are playing these things. I think Connor Selby had one. The blues player, Connor Selby. I think I heard he had one, and heard that, and I got in touch with this guy, and he built me one. But it wasn't cheap. But I had another wah to sell, which was a bit of money to put towards it. But in terms of that real authentic sort of late 60s sort of wah sound, it's just unbelievable. And a bit less gimmicky than some of the modern ones.
100%. That's why I can't be dealing with like those newer wahs with all the switches and shit. I'm like, mate, I'm not turning up to a gig and turning 3 knobs on my wah pedal. I've got enough to do. I'm doing the other shit. I'm not. And I played a mate who's got one of those new exotic wahs, and it does sound really good, but I just can't be dealing with all the knobs, really.
No, I know. I'm like that. I'm like that with pedals. If I've got to sort of get down on my hands and knees and kind of tweak it to get the right sound, I'm kind of not interested. I just want something to be there, and do its job instantly. Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
Without sounding too lazy. But like you say, as a guitar player, you've got way too many things to worry about.
100%. Yeah. If I've got one or two overdrives and a bit of reverb and tremolo, and then a tuner, and then we'll go from there. And then I'll turn up and I'll just try and play well,
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, isn't it? It's lost, I think, on a lot of guitar players.
Man, I was going to say, the ironic thing is, like, it's all well and good, all this kind of gear, and I maybe made myself sound to be a bit of a gearhead, but it's like, I think we all obsess over gear and kind of, like any guitar player does, like fantasize about owning a certain guitar or certain piece of gear, or especially if you're like into the vintage stuff. But the ironic thing is, it's like when I said, so I turned up to a rehearsal with my Lazy J. So bearing in mind, I've got like, a $2.5 grand amp with whatever guitar I was using. And then Tom rocks up with a PV, like 30 pound, like a 30-pound PV amp that's just like he's just like picked up out of a skip. And it's like, and his tone was just unbelievable. And like, he sounded absolutely amazing. And you have those like kind of humble moments where you think, fucking hell, I need to stop worrying about gear like too much, or worried about kind of finding this tone through a certain piece of gear when really it's just in here. Do you know what I mean? And that sounds really cheesy, but because I know a lot of people say it's in the hands and stuff, but it truly is. Like, it doesn't matter if BB King would have played a 2-rock, would it? You still
absolutely not. Yeah.
Like, you listen to him because it's BB King and what he's doing. And tone's an important part of all of it, but there's so much more beyond than the kind of fundamental, amp, lead, guitar sort of thing. It's how you're attacking it, your approach, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Like, I just feel like all the gear thing is aimed at a consumer's market, and it's all, it's clever branding. It's sending out a message to players that ultimately they're not good enough without it, or they need it in some way. And I just sort of like, I think I tagged you, Andy Cortez, and a few other players on my Instagram story like ages ago, last year or something, like as a joke, saying overdrive, lol. And it was like me comparing the overdrive sound of the King of Tone to the Jam Ray.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And I was flip flopping between the two, and like, there's no difference.
I know, it's hilarious. There's like a lot of this stuff that like, it's such fine margins, like, and people obsess over like certain transistors and stuff, and they're like doing like A/B demos, and it's just like, what? Is there any difference at all? Like, it's just mental.
Well, I'm of the belief now, and I've had the same gear. Like, I occasionally will switch a bit out here and there, but for the most part, it's stayed the same for a while. And I think, like, for one, I don't watch reams of reviews of pedals anymore or anything like that. But like, another thing that I'll tell myself, I'm like, George, if you can't get what you need to be able to do with a clone copy, an exact clone copy, a King of Tone, a blah blah blah, a blah blah blah. You've got a Strat with good pickups in it, and a Fender amp. Just get on with it. Like, this is it. This is you. You're here. You're doing your thing. Like, it's just nonsense. So I think that's pretty funny, because I called the podcast Talking Tone, but it's like, it's the last thing I want to talk about.
but there is ways of achieving great tone, and that's just by honing in on your kind of the things beyond the amp and the pedals and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Because I try and work on just my attack and how I'm approaching it with my right hand, you know, certain voicings. So there is so much about tone that you can get without even thinking about, you know, all the effects and that kind of crap.
For sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's like I said, I think when you're using that kind of stuff just to enhance what you're already doing, but I think if you're coming from a place where you think you need that stuff to be able to do something, is a different story.
For sure.
You know?
I think we're coming from a similar school of thought. So
Yeah.
what like I've already sort of asked you where you're at with stuff, I suppose. But mate, I hope from a deep personal level, you get playing music soon, man. Because I've always
man,
enjoyed your playing, and I think it'd just be cool. Not that I'm ever going to come up to Shrewsbury and see you play.
Joking aside, though, we should make it happen. You know, even if we meet in the middle or something, you know, it'd be great.
We absolutely should, mate. We should.
Yeah. And man, I'm traveling all over the place going to see gigs, and I'm more than happy to come down your end and watch you play. It'd be awesome.
Well, mate, even if that doesn't happen, I really like the sound of because it sounds like we got some mutual music taste in bands. Maybe if there's a middle place between the two of us, we could watch a band or something.
Definitely.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure catching up with you, Jack.
Oh, mate, cheers for having me on. Yeah, I don't know if anyone would gain anything from what we've talked about.
Oh, mate,
what I've talked about anyway. But yeah, no, it's a pleasure.
Oh, mate, I couldn't give a shit. I mean, I'm just happy to have caught up with you. To be honest,
same, mate.
It's I started this thing on a whim, and I'm not really expecting anyone to particularly watch it, even though I have had some people say, have had people watch it and give me some nice feedback and stuff. I feel like it's a slightly underappreciated thing, like as musicians and guitar players, we've all heard. I fucking love Doyle Brown, and he hasn't got enough interviews.
No, absolutely, yeah.
I'll say that he hasn't got enough interviews, but some other guys, I've heard him say the same things over and over again in different interviews, and I quite like hearing, my mates' opinions, because we're all just as valid and just as cool in our own way. We've all got our own things going on, and that's why I started. I was like, I want to know what my mates are thinking, doing, how they're getting on.
Yeah. No, it's a great idea because everyone's got a different pathway, and it's sometimes, it's great to look up to the greats and kind of learn from them, but then it's sometimes not relatable enough to kind of inspire you to kind of do your own thing. It's sometimes quite. I mean, I'm personally speaking, it's sometimes quite intimidating. When you overanalyze and think like, if that's the standard, how am I going to get there? But then when you talk to friends and you can experience their journey as well. It's like, I mean, I'm working with a guy who's just started working at the shop now. I mean, he's like a world-class jazz player. Like studied jazz in Australia. And he's just an incredible player and an incredible person to have around, to have him at my disposal to just ask questions and kind of, he's 10 years older than me. So he's had a bit more experience and played with a lot more people, and to get his insight on stuff is just amazing. And that's kind of almost as valuable as kind of watching, someone who you look up to.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that sounds like you got a good guy there. But it's just like, you're so right. I just want to sort of finish on this, like with like what we said about Doyle, like hearing Doyle speak about his thing.
Mm.
It's quite hard. It's like a young English guy, listening to Doyle talk about being raised in a house with Stevie Ray Vaughan and his dad
Yeah.
and all these guys.
I mean,
And
wasn't his dad the drummer for Freddie King?
yeah, yeah,
It's
his
like,
dad was the fucking drummer for Freddie King. My dad is like an old grizzled chef from Weymouth. Like, I have like nothing there. I suppose
yeah,
like me and Doyle, there are definitely relation. I can relate to his experience in some ways for sure. He's been through addiction and stuff, and I am
yeah,
fortunate or fortunately have been through similar. And so there's relatable points, but there's a lot there where you're just like, I can't relate to that, man.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Same. I play predominantly sort of. I mean, the music I play doesn't relate to who I am and where I've grown up. Do you know what I mean? I'm a guy
yeah,
from rural Shropshire playing like James Brown. it's pretty,
yeah,
it's pretty comical, but it's just what it is, isn't it? You people like us, we've maybe got to dig a little deeper and just kind of
for sure, for sure. Yeah,
yeah,
that's always the funny one. Like when I'm at a gig and I'm like, right, this next song's a Sly Stone song, and it's like
yeah, yeah.
it's like playing to a load of like white people who have never ever heard of Sly Stone.
I know,
The
I know.
the closest they've got to soul music is Adele, or something. It's like
Yeah,
it's
aloe black or something. Yeah.
yeah. It's totally different, but we love it. At the end of the day, that's why we gravitate towards it, and I wouldn't have
Yeah,
it the other
absolutely.
way. It's what we do.
No, too right.
All right, man. Well, it was good to catch up with you, Pusser, and
Yeah, you too, mate. Thanks so much for having me on. It's good to
no,
see
mate,
you.
and you. Speak soon.
Wicked. Yeah, speak soon, mate.
Cheers.